So I'm really excited. I've mentioned to you that it's taken me a while to find a DNA company that is not out there to scare anybody, but that you can use your results, and this is the company that I've been working with just lately. You can use your results to enhance your life as opposed to be afraid that you might get something. You can turn on your DNA, you can turn off your DNA. So it gives you informed choice. I am thrilled and honored to have the CEO of Nordic Laboratories, which is related to the DNAlife.
That's right.
So his name is Chris Moore. And Chris, thank you so much for taking the time and sitting here with me to talk about one of the reasons I said I just absolutely love you guys is because you're from a foreign country. And I hate saying this, but it is true. I feel that there are times where we taint what we do. And I know some of you might be upset about that, but being in the field that I'm in, I get to see some of the realities that are out there. And when I learned about Nordic Laboratories, I wanted to learn more. And so this is the part of it. So thank you so much for taking the time out of this conference.
Lily, it's a pleasure. And it's wonderful your program comes out to so many people that they can learn more about health. And the big shift in healthcare in the next generation is about health ownership.
Yes.
And the more people take a responsibility and learn about how their bodies work earlier, you'll see better and better results and hopefully mitigating the risk of disease. So what you're doing is a very, very important role in communicating what the healthcare gurus out there are now trying to propagate.
Well, thank you. And I feel like many of the DNA companies are using our DNA against us. And I think what I liked about when I was speaking with Helena, I met her several weeks ago, you're using it to empower people.
Well, first of all, let's go back a couple of decades perhaps. The whole functional medicine, personalized medicine world started in the early 90s with the idea that we have to understand what's behind our symptoms, what's the cause of symptoms, rather than the symptom, putting a plaster on top of the symptom, which is what allopathic medicine has done for a very long time. And there were some very, very bright people that went about establishing laboratories, mainly in immunology, some gastroenterology, then hormones, but they were very small. These were very focused and researchers and good people that were trying to find out things about our bodies that we didn't otherwise understand. Mm-hmm. But like any industry, there are inherent weaknesses. And there's another thing that's more important or more problematic is that in any industry, it's all about commercial activity. And you have to sell to survive. So what happened was these small laboratories added away from their core competencies and added more and more assays and tests that sound good and probably are quite helpful, but are they the best in the market? So when we started working with all this, I said, okay, can I be an expert in all these areas? Mm-hmm. And the answer is no. But what I did want to be an expert in was helping to qualify which lab does the best test and help and become the right hand of the doctor rather than the right hand of the laboratory. So our business model really revolves around understanding which test works best for the patient, and then educating with the doctor, and the doctor in turn the patient, and how to get the most from the test. So as time went by, we got the advent of genetics. Now, in any other discipline, we've got 100 years of experience in trying to understand the data. Mm-hmm. In genetics, we've got 20 years less than that. And we're having to upskill a whole generation of doctors very, very, very quickly, as well as ourselves. And a lot of people thought genetics was going to be the turnkey for everything. Mm-hmm. And it may very well be. But our challenge is understanding what we know today rather than predicting or guessing what we might know tomorrow. A lot of labs were jumping on the bandwagon and saying, yep, we've got this test. It's going to tell you everything you need to know, Lily, about yourself. Mm-hmm. And in a couple of quick steps, you're going to be a better version of yourself. And that's what you've seen a lot of these direct-to-consumer products or lab tests have been doing. And many people will be aware of 23andMe and a number of others who have done a good job. I'm not dismissing their role. It's helped change the healthcare modality quite quickly. It's empowered people. Yes. Take responsibility, find out about yourself. The problem is they come back with information that is clinically questionable or challenging or problematic in terms of how does that individual employ them. And we need people in the middle.
Sure.
So, and those people are doctors. That's why we have teams of clinicians training for many years. And what we did in Nordic Laboratories, we went about this whole market and said, who is actually acting most, in my opinion, most responsibly with the knowledge that we currently have. And I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Danny Mayersfield, who is from South Africa, Johannesburg, who had focused in on nutrigenomics, one specific area of genealogy, that we can learn what we understand can be mitigated. That is to say that the environment will play a role in how those genes are expressed. That's exciting. And what Danny did, unlike most other actors, he said, but we only know a certain amount. So let's not be clever. Let's not go beyond what we know. Let's focus in on those genes that are the most important. And in those days, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago, but we only had perhaps a third of the genes that we currently have on our panel, simply because the science wasn't robust enough. It's easy to say, oh yeah, but we think this is going to happen. But when you're asking a consumer to engage with that information, they've got to know, they've got to be comfortable with the knowledge they're going to get. So what we said was, okay, we're a long way from a consumer being really capable of taking this on board themselves. We need to get doctors trained first and competently. So we started DNAlife with the mission to upskill the doctors, upskill the practitioners, create a training course that is really quite in depth and requires quite a lot of commitment from the doctor, and in turn give them tools in which they can use the genetic tests in their practice. Now, it might sound quite a simple thing, isn't that what we always do with lab tests? But again, we're going through this very rapid change, and therefore genetics is something that's so new that a lot of these doctors are needing that support. So that's what we wanted to do. Then what happens is the choice of those SNPs, the choice of those genes that we include in the panel, have to have at least 3 major published research, and they also have to be manageable within an environment.
So let me ask you, one of the reasons why I wanted to sit with you, and I had mentioned the corruption of some labs, and it's not that they're corrupt, it's just that their product is not as the integrity that we would want, right? So one of the questions I asked you is, what makes your lab differently, and what should we look for when we are selecting a lab for ourselves?
I can tell you what we do. I can tell you the answer to that for you as a consumer is a very difficult one.
Yes.
First of all, no laboratory will ever tell you that they're not very good at what they do.
Sure.
Right? They're always going to say, this test is the best in the market and this is why it's the best. And they have valid, in their minds at least, valid arguments. What we do is we go into the lab, we look at what methodology they use, what lab machinery they use. Then we look at something called, it's a very simple process, but split samples, whereby we take your blood or your saliva and put it in 3 vials, 2 or 3 vials. And we put your name on one, my name on the other, and someone else's name on the third one. And then we send it into the lab. And we would like them to come back the same, but they don't always. And that is a very simple way. Same person, 3 different names.
3 different labs.
No, same lab.
Oh, same lab.
Just 3 different names.
I get you.
They don't know it's the same person.
Yes.
So they report back 3 times, but it's not always the same result.
Why do you think that is?
Methodology, weaknesses, the integrity of the actual sample. So has it been collected properly?
Okay.
Question mark.
So there's always that error.
There can be errors there. Now, no lab is 100%. And that might be a shocker for everybody, but no lab is 100%. They are going to be anywhere between 80 to 90% reproducible, and that's understandable and is acceptable. So the problem is, if you get a lab that's only 50% reproducible, what 50% do you use?
Yes, exactly. What do you trust?
And this industry, like any other industry, is commercial. It's trying to build sales, and they don't tell you necessarily that story.
Mm-hmm. Can we find out what the results are, or what the capabilities of that particular lab? Because usually our insurances in the United States, our insurance determine what lab you use, unfortunately. I don't have insurance. I have health share, which I can go anywhere I want to go, and I can choose where I want to go. And part of me doing the show is I want people to have true informed choice.
Right. How do you find out about that? Well, I can tell you we take sometimes months and months and months of evaluation of these labs to come.
And you've researched so many labs before. That was what you started doing.
We could walk into many, many different labs. I look around, I see what they have, and look, they're all getting better. Everyone's getting better. But in every sector of any industry, you have at the top, and then you have those underneath. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is number one. So that's our job, to help you, namely the clinicians. That's our mission, is to help the clinicians understand which of these options is the best based on today's knowledge. Mm-hmm. And now I'm the most open and willing to accept that people become better at what they do. So this year's number 3 might be number 1 next year. Mm-hmm. So we need to keep dynamically changing our appraisal system to make sure that we really are representing the best test. Now, we probably have 2 or 3 different categories of test value. The one perhaps is the most accurate sort of testing is like for HIV. If you're positive HIV, unfortunately, that's it. There's no real margin of error unless the lab have changed the sample with a different name or something silly like that.
Horrible.
But that's where that is. Then you get the next silo where the information you're getting is pretty good. We can maybe look at cardiovascular markers. They are normally within a certain range, and we sort of understand that has indicative factors towards increased cardiovascular risk. Mm-hmm. And then you might go as far as out as a certain test for food intolerances, where the accuracy may not be quite as high as we think it is, but the value of doing that test is significant because it helps the consumer, the patient, focus in on better healthcare strategy. So although the test may not, in true scientific value, be robust enough, the value set it gives to the doctor to help encourage their patient to do lifestyle changes which are necessary outweighs the weaknesses that the test might have.
Okay.
I'm not saying that they all do, but I'm just saying that sometimes it's all right to choose a test which isn't 100% because the added value it gives to helping the patient understand where they need to go to. Yeah.
But that's the downside of it, Chris, is that if I take my DNA and I put it in 3 different samples and 3 different names, that's it for me, because your DNA, you just, yeah. But what I'm saying is that there's only one test, one and done. Mm-hmm. So if I've gone to the wrong lab, mm-hmm. now I've wasted that one and done because I'm thinking that this is the right thing. Has anyone done this test on your laboratory, and how did you guys do?
Well, I hope people do it all the time. I'm afraid to say I doubt they do. Mm-hmm. And I don't know many doctors that do constant split samples. It's quite an expensive process. It's very, very time consuming and stealing. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, they hope that the lab knows what they're talking about. When we're talking about the test that I was talking about previously, were the more functional type of testing. With genetic tests specifically, you're indeed correct. Your genetic profile is just one. It's not going to change, and therefore the labs need to be absolutely accurate.
Sure.
Most are pretty good. Mm-hmm. It's all about the interpretation of those results. What do they mean?
And that's what separates you guys, mm-hmm. because you are constantly working with the doctors, the ones that are ordering these tests. because I had shared with you that I worked with doctors with DNA testing, and we would deliver the DNA. Doctors didn't know.
Yeah.
They had no clue how to interpret this. What do you guys do differently to educate doctors?
Well, we make it a prerequisite. Anybody that does work with these tests have to do our DNAlife training. I think we're probably the only company in the world that makes that prerequisite. We won't sell to other doctors.
Another reason that I would choose you guys.
I don't think we won't accept a doctor to do our testing without them either pre-qualifying themselves, which they could do. They said to us, listen, I've done this and this and this course. I'm very confident with my ability to interpret this. I think that's reasonable.
Yes,
people are doing lots of external training, but we really want them to do that DNAlife training, because we know exactly as you're alluding to, the challenges that we're faced in a clinical perspective is that you get this information, and what do I do with it? And genetics, and this is a classic, or a lot of researchers or presenters say this: genes load the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger.
That's true.
And if you just do a genetic test and don't include mitigating environmental changes, then there's no point doing it. Not really.
Sure.
So what we have to understand is we have to make sure the clinician knows that when certain gene expression is demonstrated, what could be the underlying challenge and what should they do to mitigate it. That's what we're aimed at. That's what we're really trying to do, is we're saying, okay, you've got the genes, that's your structure. We now want to push it into the function. How does your body actually adapt? So it could be, and I'll use a relatively easy example. It could be that genetically, you seem poor at utilizing vitamin B6 and B12. You could give B6 and B12, but you'll be guessing that that the patient was deficient in those. What would be the right thing to do would be to do a test to measure your functional status of B6 and B12.
Sure.
Now, your body could have found ways to fight against that genetic expression, and your B12 is normal, whereas your B6 is low. So what you would give is additional B6. That's the right way to practice preventative personalized medicine.
Yeah, and what I've been listening to on the radio show, on the Lou McDermott radio show, for those of you, if this is the first time you've been watching this, go to whenyouneedafriend.com. And what is your website? I was trying to find your website here on the card, and I remember I'm having
we have a lot of websites.
No, but the DNAlife.
We want to go .healthcare.
.healthcare. That was it. I was trying to find it. It's okay. So it's DNAlife.healthcare. Yes.
And then what we then want to happen is that the patient is given tools in which they can begin that process of reducing the risk of disease manifestation. Now, there will be those, of course, who are already clinically ill.
Sure.
So they have a different road. But those that are yet to be ill, and now we come into something we were speaking earlier about, which is called biohacking.
Yeah.
And the biohacking movement is really quite exciting. It's being driven by tech-savvy young people who are saying to themselves, hang on, I can get all this information about my body. I can find out about my genes. I can find out about how I utilize nutrients. I can find out how my digestive system works. This is important if I want to prevent disease occurring. Can I do that? And the answer is yes. So these guys are engaging in all sorts of numbers to understand how their body works, making dietary changes, changing their exercise programs, mindfulness, sleep patterns, all these sorts of things play a role. And I'm wearing this ring, which is called Aura, Aura ring. It's Finnish, from Nokia technicians who are now working with this type of thing. And here we can measure my sleep patterns, my
amazing
heart rate variability, my resting heart rate, and I think it's far more accurate than many of these other monitoring systems. But what I'm able to do is I see a pattern now back over, I think I've been wearing this about 8-9 months. So I can see my sleep patterns, I can see my resting heart rate, when I have a beer or two, which unfortunately is something I do every now and again, my resting heart rate goes up. Now, that means something physiologically is happening, and I now have information about it, and I have a responsibility to make a decision on what I want to do.
That's the word about my show, responsibility. If you take one word about my show, it's responsibility in every aspect of our life. Because the good news about responsibility, and this is how I use it, many people think of responsibility as blame, shame, fault, and duty, right?
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, responsibility, I'm working on reformatting it to empowerment and freedom. Because there's a school of thought and there's evidence that we are the creators of our life, right? And so the good news is if I created everything, if I'm responsible for everything in my life, the good news is if I created it, I can uncreate it. And that is what I loved from the beginning, which made a good match with DNAlife, which because you focus also on responsibility. Many people get these results and they start cutting up body parts. But 50% of the people may get disease, but the other 50% don't. And what I love is that we can work on the 50% that don't get the disease and change our life.
I think, and I think there's something even more important with that responsibility take is that it's not just a personal responsibility, it's a social responsibility.
Yes.
We have this idea that we have healthcare to protect us when we fall down. It's if it all was only a switch or a button or a pill and everything would be all right, then maybe that's okay. But we've proven that's not the case.
But there's no pill.
There's no pill
that can do what responsibility. Now, I'm not saying that this is the end all be all. If I'm in a car accident or if I break a bone, I am going to go to the emergency room and get the help that I need. We have excellent doctors that patch us up together.
Agreed, and that we should. And going, I'm from the European world and I'm British, but live in Denmark. The NHS in Britain is crying out for more money. And they're crying out, saying we don't have enough money. And I'm saying, hang on a second, you've got way too much money.
Yes.
But the problem is the consumer, the patients, the general population are streaming to their doctors saying, doctor, I'm ill, save me. And I think genuinely that we can do so much to mitigate that process. You don't have to go to the doctor because you have a high temperature.
No.
You don't.
As a matter of fact, your body is burning off the infection.
Absolutely.
But what do? We cut off the fever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have two children, one 21 and one 16. And the 16-year-old came home the other day and he said, Dad, I've been at my mate's house and he's got a bit of a cold. And he said, oh, I'm going to go to the doctor's tomorrow to get some antibiotics.
For a cold.
Yeah. And Oliver said, you don't need to go to the doctor. Why are you going to do that? He said, yeah, but I do that every time I get the cold and then it all goes away. And so Oliver came back and he said, that's a bit crazy, isn't it, that? And I'm sort of half reading something, not really listening. And I go, yeah, when was the last time you went to the doctor, Ollie? When was the last time you had a prescription? He said, I've never had a prescription. And he said, Dad, I've never been to the doctor. And that is true. He has never been to the doctor because he takes his vitamins, he eats his organic food, he exercises, and luckily he's not had anything serious, where of course we would need the hospital system. And I think that's what I mean about responsibility.
Yes.
It's saying we have responsibility to our social, to our world of fellow humans, not to put strain on social systems if we can defend against it. So pay more for organic food. Well,
ultimately, it's cheaper to eat organic food.
Absolutely. Because
the diseases, we're listening to the conference here. They're talking about toxins in our food, our environment, and our makeup. And I just aligned myself with a group, and I'm wearing the makeup today, they're all organic.
Great.
And it's a skin cleanser and the foundation. Everything is all organic, no pesticides, no chemicals. It's all from the earth,
Great.
The way it's supposed to be.
Absolutely.
But not that I can't imagine back in the the caveman years, anybody was putting on lipstick and all that.
Right.
But the importance is, as we get further and further away from our ancestry and our roots, we've done things to enhance ourselves that are causing our bodies to malfunction.
Correct. But we're also at this tipping point, and it's very, very exciting, it really is. If we can see how we are now able to help our bodies protect against disease, and it's all about knowledge, informed knowledge.
Informed.
Make sure you read, make sure you qualify, make sure you consider, ask the doctor or your practitioner, is this the right way? Could it be something else? Don't be subjected to their top-down decision-making, but rather engage at a level where I have a question to you, can you help me answer that?
Mm-hmm.
And then the clinician can come and say, well, I've looked at this and this and this way before, I think this will help you.
Yeah.
And therefore you're part of that process. We have 5 clinics in Europe under the name of Nordic Clinic. And what we're probably, I don't know if we're unique to this, but we're certainly very few of us that have in every single consult a doctor and what we call a patient educator. And the patient educator's job is to sit alongside the doctor, not make a noise, not say a word, whilst the doctor and the patient have this very much one-on-one discussion, mm-hmm. but the patient educator makes copious notes of what is being spoken about. Because I found when I did some very rudimentary research, asking our patients, okay, what have you learned today from your consult? Even the brightest never came back with more than 3 or 4 things.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
And that was immediately after. So think about 2 or 3 days later, what would that be? Probably even less. So the idea was, how do we engage the patient, help the patient to embark on this road of recovery, feeling that they've got the support of a clinical team. So the patient educator then becomes the contact person for the patient after they leave the consult. And when we now do our quality control evaluation questionnaires, the thing that comes back every time is that the best thing about your service is the patient educator.
Wow, very good. And we've lost that connection. And I'm glad that you guys are bringing responsibility back into health, and that we can make informed choices. The information that you learn here today, as you're learning a little bit more about DNA testing and DNAlife, I want to encourage you to research it yourself. This has become my truth. You need to make this your truth. And I'm so grateful that I stumbled upon you guys, did a little bit of research on this, on your company, and I am so excited to partner up in any way that we possibly can. That way we can all take responsibility. Real quick before we go, is there anything that you would like to tell my viewing friends about taking ownership in a proactive way with DNA Health?
Well, I think 2 things. One, it's no race. There's not a race to good health. We would all like to have good health all the time, but be prudent, use your dollars sensibly, invest in the right things, and genetics is your first step to understanding how your body works. So invest in a genetic test is a very sensible thing. You're going to learn a lot about yourself, but from there you must understand you have to do the next step, which is to look at how you function and work. And that's why you need to engage with clinicians, good, well-educated functional medicine doctors
that understand it, right?
We're at a conference here with 1,500 doctors. When I was here in Hollywood the last time, I think it was 1999, we were 120 doctors.
Wow.
So this movement is massive, but it is really, when you take a genetic test, it's a step in understanding your structure. And that's so important in how we understand why certain people have reactions to food, why others have digestive problems, why others have problems about the way they detoxify and all these things. We're unique. And I think if there's nothing else that you walk away from this, listening to this, is that every one of us is unique. And a lot of, every now and again, I hear people saying, oh, it's such a shame I can't eat gluten, or it's such a shame I can't do this, it was unfair, or one thing that. No, it's not. We're humans. Each of us are individual. What one person finds beneficial, the other doesn't. But that's not fair or unfair. It's just a reality of
it just is. It is. You know, the moment we put a right or wrong to what is fair or what is not fair, then we lose the battle right there. And another thing I want to add to this, many of you, and I know that this is, as a life coach, a certified life coach, I hear this all the time, I just don't want to know. Why don't you want to know? Why don't you want to know what works best for you so that your yellow brick road to health, because everybody has a yellow brick road, and I don't know if you know that terminology. Oh, you've never seen The Wizard of Oz?
I have seen it.
Okay, so follow your yellow brick road.
I'm old enough to see it.
Okay, so everybody has their own yellow brick road.
Mm-hmm.
We're all looking for that big pill, that savior out there. But the reality is, it's in us. Earlier, I had my DNA test results read to me, and it showed me that if I am willing to do whatever it takes to live a healthy life, my body will respond. That's the beauty of it all.
And at
any age.
I mean, again, going back to that biohacking whole discussion, that's exactly it. People, these young people, and this is the most inspiring thing for me, is I go to a lot of medical conferences all over the world, and I'm used to hearing doctors talk about it, and they come up with their questions. But the exciting thing about the biohacker world is these are young non-medics taking responsibility, finding things out about themselves, and then doing the interventions. And they have a great time doing it. They wear gadgets like this, and they eat, they
I could be a biohacker. Are you a biohacker?
I think I'm a biohacker.
Yeah, I think I'm a biohacker.
I might be too old for it, but for the term, but I'm biohacking. I remember in America now, there's a very neat juice or smoothie bar called Joe and the Juice.
Mm-hmm.
You might know of them.
Yeah.
Joe and the Juice is massive globally now, but it's a Danish brand.
Oh, okay.
And
I have to look them up.
You go to Fifth Street in New York, and or I saw one at, where did I land? In Miami Airport. There's a Joe and the Juice. And when these guys started, I went, what are they trying to do? How are they going to get the population of Denmark to start drinking a smoothie in the morning, and then every time they can go into their
Hey, Starbucks created that. They figured it out.
Right. Well, this is a juice.
I know, but coffee's not needed. Juice, on the other hand, we might need.
Yeah, but would you pay? Now you might do, but we're going back not that many years. But would you have paid $10 for a juice? Right. The answer I said was no way. It's not going to happen.
I would do it myself, much cheaper.
Correct. But now you've got young people going into these trendy places, and the music's blasting, the good-looking girls and boys, and they're selling juice.
That's
and people
awesome.
are paying $10, and they're not buying a beer, they're not buying a glass of wine.
That's awesome.
They're buying a juice. So there has been a fundamental shift in purchasing power and desire and demand for better quality. And that's what I'm saying. There's going to be the shift in society. There's going to be those that have, and I'm saying have in a healthcare modality, who are doing these things, who are going to the juice bar because they like drinking the juice, because it's cool to drink juice. And those that don't get it, who are still thinking their doctor's going to give them that pill, and I'm afraid to say they ain't going to get very far.
That leads me to something that we talk about on the Will McDermott radio show quite a bit. I was talking to Dr. Joel Furman. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is, but he's been a regular on my show for the last 2+ years. And in a conversation that we had, he said, what would you do if there wasn't a pill to cure your disease? And I said to Dr. Furman, it's like, how would you eat differently? Because what we do is we take the pill so we can go back to eating the way that caused us to get sick from the beginning. Right. And I said to Dr. Furman, I said, well, Dr. Furman, there is no pill. A pill will help us take another pill, keep us sick enough to need another pill. Now, a nutraceutical, nutrition, nothing beats that. Mind, body, spirit work,
Absolutely.
Dealing with,
Absolutely.
That was one of the things that I felt that there's not enough in this conference, which is childhood traumas and how they contribute to our health or lack of health. So there's so many different ways there's so many different modalities that we can adopt to ourselves. And working with your DNA and learning what is best for you is great. These tests, how expensive are they?
Well, the answer to that in a slightly different way. That I don't think they're that expensive, but everything has its price.
It's affordable.
But
listen, people pay $1,000 for their phone.
Right, it's not $1,000. It's not $1,000.
No, it's like, but you know, it's what's more important to discover the pathway to health, or to have the latest phone.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to. So these tests, they range from around $375, and they fall to about 200 and I think 225.
Totally affordable.
And ultimately, again, if you're doing a genetic test and you're doing it to help understand how your body works, and you're doing prevention methods, guess what? You're going to function better. That means you're going to have a greater potential in your work, to achieve greater goals, to enjoy your holidays with your families, and not be sick. So the cost.
And be healthy.
Be healthy, yeah.
And be healthy.
And that, I think, is, you know, when I moved to Denmark in 1994, I was 24 years old, and I had a fridge half full of beer and half full of organic food. And my friends would come by and they open the fridge and they go, "Chris, what a waste of money." And I go, "What? I love my beer." and they say, no, it's the organic food. What a waste of money." And I say, "Yeah, you know what? You might be right. But I don't want to turn around in 20 years' time and say, oh, if only I'd listened to my own intuition." And I followed my own intuition. And 20 years later, we know that organic food is significantly better. And it's not just better for us individually, it's better for humanity. And today, I saw in Denmark, they banned an insecticide, which is otherwise prevalent in most Western countries. You know, we've been damaging the earth, and it's not our. No one owns this earth. We have a shared responsibility to look after it for the next generation. Likewise, in healthcare, nobody owns healthcare. So these pharmaceutical companies and others who are building, this is my IP, intellectual property, you can't take this knowledge because we own it. I don't think it's right. I understand why they do it, but I don't think it's right. And in terms of Nordic laboratories and DNAlife, our mission is to help change healthcare. And if we can achieve that, and others come along and take it further, then that's great.
And I'll let that be the last word. For those of you who want to take charge of your life and make a difference for your health, learn the right path for you, this is a great company that I recommend, DNAlife. That's DNAlife.healthcare.
That's right.
Got it right this time.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you for watching, and thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.